Welcome to Gamers Platform. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Adam Wolf from Gamers Platform, and in this video I'm bringing you a fix for the Final Fantasy XV Windows Edition benchmark that came out from Square Enix not too long ago. I did a video on it, just really showing you guys that there was a benchmark, but it has been brought to my attention thanks to Digital Foundry that the benchmark, although says full screen, as you guys can see right here, it says full screen. It's not exactly full screen. It's actually running in borderless windowed, which is normally a mode that I actually run my games in. But with that, there are some caveats. A lot of the time when you run a game in borderless window mode, other processes tend to run in the background, which is why full screen mode is actually so important sometimes. And even though this says full screen, it is not actually true full screen. So thanks to Dr. Daxi, okay, over on Reddit, he had actually brought a fix to the benchmark here. And I'll leave the links to this in the video description so that you guys can fix your stuff as well. You're just going to go to this URL here, and you're going to follow the steps to implement this fix. And really, there aren't any manipulations to the original file, so you won't actually be hurting the files themselves of the installation. You're just going to be adding things to it and creating your own custom shortcut. So, and this video is actually going to be step by step, showing you what to do. There's a lot of videos out there today that just show you the end results, and I'm sick of those videos because I'm trying to figure out how to do certain things, and people just don't go through the steps that are provided to show the changes. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to run the benchmark base, okay, and so that way we can get a good idea as to what kind of increase we're looking at here, and then I will go through the steps to show you guys the changes that you have to make in order to help this run a little bit better. So we're going to run the benchmark on high quality so that way we can really kind of push it and see the difference. And here we go, and we're just going to run through it. You see I've got my frame rate counter up in the top right here so you guys can see. Now what Digital Foundry had mentioned was that the score that you actually end up seeing at the end of the video is more or less your frame rate. Actually, it's going to be your average frame rate times 1000. So if you see a score of like 4500 or something at the end, that means your average frame rate throughout the majority of the benchmark was 45 FPS. You'll see mine probably hit about 42 to 45, give or take. And you can see that replicated with the frame rate counter in the top right corner. So now, is this actually you know, being affected by my recording software? Maybe a slight tad. I already checked it out myself, and it looks like it didn't really affect it that much, but you know, just keep that in mind as well. I am using OBS to record, and it's possible that it may cause minor dips, but overall there is a big improvement. You'll see it yourself throughout the run of these benchmarks. Now the benchmark is going to last about, I want to say, at least 8 minutes or so, give or take. I could be wrong, but yeah, I just really feel as though a lot of videos tend to cover, you know, oh, this is what I got in my initial run, and here's how to fix it real quick, and then here's the end result. And I just, you know, how about going through the steps with the audience? All right, let's show some stuff here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you guys exactly what to do so that way you're not lost. You know, I already did all the reading and everything, and I know people don't like reading these days, but I actually prefer videos as well. I'm a visual learner, so not that I can't learn by reading, but I prefer to watch and do. So maybe this video will help you guys out as well, and hopefully it does. I really do. I hope it does, because it sure as hell helped me. Now throughout this version of the benchmark, you'll see, I mean, I guess it was just initial loading issues that I was having. You know, the benchmark wasn't run yet. It was a fresh start of the computer or the day, and there was quite a lot of hitching going on in my first run of this benchmark today. But it seems as though those have cleared up, and it's running a little bit smoother than before, but still running at about 45 FPS. And especially in when you get closer in on the characters or, you know, environmental detail, it does slow down sometimes. As you saw, transitioning from the car to the Chocobo stop, it dropped the frame rate from about 40 to 30. So yeah, it really does depend on the what's in the scene, as always. It does turn out as well, after doing some more digging, Dr. Daxi also found out that there are some NVIDIA settings. You guys, if you've ever played The Witcher 3, you know the NVIDIA Hairworks settings. Those actually are in the game, and there's some tessellation features and shadow features that are exclusive to NVIDIA that exist in this benchmark, but they're automatically turned off. And it's to be believed that it's to maximize compatibility with AMD cards as well, so that way, you know, I mean, because it wouldn't make sense if those were on and you were using an AMD card. It would completely bog down your system and it wouldn't work. Though it does turn out that Richard Ledbetter over at Digital Foundry had tried. He was running a 1080 Ti, and with those settings on, even the 1080 Ti was hard-pressed to even keep 60 frames a second, which tells you a lot about those particular graphic settings. So, yeah, the NVIDIA Hairworks settings and a lot of their special stuff, really, man, they're heavy. They're heavy. NVIDIA's really pushing things far with their technology, and their hardware can't even keep up. Their own hardware can't keep up with the technology that they want to implement in these games. So, but it's pretty crazy. And so, yeah, when you're going through and implementing these fixes and you want to try everything on the high preset or the high quality preset, just make sure that you keep the NVIDIA settings off if you want a consistent frame rate. I think if you're going to play this game with a 30 frame rate cap, then you should be fine to turn those on. I haven't tried that out myself, but, you know, I'm sure that even my 1060 would be able to run a 30 FPS cap even with those, most of those, maybe not all of them, but some of those special features, NVIDIA features implemented. So if you've been watching the frame rate counter in the top right corner going up and down and left and right, you will notice that roughly hangs around 45-ish, 40-ish FPS. And again, that's what the score in the bottom left is actually going to reflect. So we're coming to the end of the benchmark here. Remember, this is my initial run with no changes at all. And we're running at about 8.5 minutes, so maybe about 5 minutes, because I talked for about 2 to 3 minutes before when we started this video. But you can see 42.12, so about 42 FPS was the average. I got a higher score earlier, so that says something about, you know, I guess that would be where maybe my recording software has taken a hit to the benchmark. But anyway, so let's get into the fixes. So what you're going to do, again, is you're going to go here, you're going to hit this little link here, and you're going to download Final Fantasy 15 Bench Custom 1.0 zip. Okay, not the source stuff, you want this. All right, and again, I'm going to leave this link in the description as well, so you don't have to worry about it. And so what we're going to do is we're going to follow these steps. So I'm going to drag this over to my second monitor so that way I can just show you guys real quick. Okay, so I've already got this downloaded. We're going to go to my downloads. Here it is right here. I've extracted it. Once you open this folder, you'll see this dinput8.dll file. You'll want this file to go into the installation folder. My installation folder is on a SSD. I've installed an SSD for best possible scenario. And we're going to go to the Square Enix folder, Final Fantasy 15 benchmark. I highly suggest that you make a copy of this folder and put it somewhere safe, so in case you do screw something up, you can just, put your original files back. Put them back where you found them. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to copy. So I'm a shortcut key user, so I'm going to use Control-C and then Control-V. And so we see that there's the D input 8.dll. Now, after this, you want to go preferably to your Documents folder, just because it's an easy place. You want to open this in a new window, and you're going to create a custom configuration file. So you're going to create a Final Fantasy 15 _custom.ini file. Just name it that. I mean, you can name it whatever you want, whatever is going to be easy for you. This just allows it to be a little bit easier to follow the steps. Okay, so you're going to create this file, just make it. Okay, and then you go back to the folder where you have the fixes, and you see that we've got 3 different settings. It's the settings for the game. And you can open up any one of these in a notepad or any kind of text editor that you favor. I have Notepad++. I like to open up most of my stuff in there. So I'm going to do the high setting. Again, we're trying to push it to the limits to see what it's capable of. We're going to open this up in Notepad. And as you can see, I already highlighted things earlier. And what we're going to do is we're actually going to, you can see all the settings here. So you got everything you could possibly want to tweak in this benchmark. Now, whether all this stuff is going to be in the game, well, that has yet to be seen. But you can see all of the GameWorks, the NVIDIA GameWorks settings right here. This stuff we're going to be turning off in our custom file. Speaking of which, we're going to open this up in Notepad++ as well. As you can see, I've already copied over. So you're just going to highlight everything and then copy things over. I've already set it up to where it's got the NVIDIA GameWorks settings turned off. Everything else is the same because we want the high preset. Apparently, there's even an FPS counter in the game, in the benchmark, but I'm keeping that off for my own frame rate counter. Thank you very much. So you're gonna copy from whatever configuration file that you want, light, standard, or high. Copy, paste it into your own custom file, save it, okay, and then you can close this out, and that part's done. Now, the last part that you want to do, all right, we're going to close out the Documents folder. You're going to go back to your installation folder. You're going to right-click the exe, not the bench.exe, because if I'm not mistaken, this opens up the launcher. What you want is the Final Fantasy 15.exe. Right-click it, send to, create shortcut. And this will send it to your desktop. And this is where all the fixes get implemented. That D input 8DL file, I believe, basically tells the code that, hey, this is where the changes are made or something. It has something to do with telling the benchmark that this is going to be run from a different location or different. This has a different configuration file in use, sort of thing. So we're going to right-click this, go to Properties, and in the Target section, what you're going to do at the end of it, make sure you go to the end, okay, of this path here. You're actually going to be inputting a few things. So the first thing we're going to be putting in is the path to where the configuration file we just made is. So I guess I prematurely closed the Documents folder. We're going to go here, go to your Documents, go to your custom configuration file. You can even get the path name from here. Okay, and here's the path to my configuration file. So I'm going to copy this. Keyboard backlight turned off for some reason. Okay. There is going to be a space. Okay, make sure you put a space between the end of this and the start of everything else. 2 dashes. Graphics. Ini. Okay, space. In quotes. paste that file path, put an extra backslash, and then type in the name of the file. So in our case, like I said, it'd be easier to follow along if you named it the same thing I did. FFXV, sorry, underscore custom.ini. Okay? So that, and then close the quotes. So that's the path. That's the file path that you want this particular shortcut to look for. You want it to look for that file because those are the graphic settings that you want it to run. Space, 2 more dashes, display resolution. Okay, so this is going to be obviously the resolution that the window actually is opened up to. And we're going to run it, of course, at 1920 by 1080. Space, oops, dash dash, rendering resolution. And of course, this is actually the resolution that you want the game itself to render at. And so we're going to be going for 1920 by 1080, so that's 1080p. You can actually put this at 4K if you want to. That basically mimics super sampling, so you can have a 1080 screen, but it's rendering at a much higher resolution while in game. Space, dash dash, locale, and this is basically going to be setting the language that you that is set in that has been specified in the settings. Mine, of course, is English, so I'm going to put EN, but you put whatever is right for you, whatever language that you are using on yours. And then one more thing, space dash F for full screen. Okay, this is true full screen. It may seem like it's borderless because you can still click outside the window and the benchmark won't minimize or anything like that, but I have seen a major difference, and you're about to see that in a minute. So what you're going to do now is just hit apply and then OK. All right, and then we're just going to minimize all these. All right. And we're going to run the benchmark again. This is not going to bring up the launcher now. This is just going to run the benchmark right off the bat. So we're going to do that right now. And definitely take note of the frame rate counter in the top right. And of course, at the end, notice the score at the bottom left. You should see an improvement. We're still running it on the high graphics settings. And remember, the last score was 4212.
You're good.
And again, take into account the fact that I'm recording as well. So that definitely matters.
See you around.
Hopefully it's not too bad. Earlier when I was running this, I was actually up in the 70s at that shot right there. So definitely shows how much of
Let's hit it.
How much the game is actually, or how much the recording is actually eating up. Sorry, I was switching to game capture there. My bad. I was on display capture, and that tends to eat up frame rate a little bit more than game capture does, but we'll see. We'll see. Fingers crossed that this actually does show an improvement, and you guys aren't just thinking that I'm just like losing my mind here. But you should see an improvement not only in just the frame rate, but also the fluidity of the benchmark as well. I had mentioned earlier that when I first ran the benchmark for the day, it was a stuttering, hitching mess. And then afterwards, as you guys saw in the earlier thing, earlier segment of the video, it was running much, much better. There wasn't much hitching, but the frame rate was lower. Now remember, when we got out at this point, the frame rate had dipped to 30 FPS, so we're already seeing an improvement. We're hitting about 50. And yeah, but the benchmark should run a little bit smoother as well. Now, again, I'm going to show you one quick thing at the end to prove that this is actually working. The fix is actually working. I'm actually going to change the render resolution to show you guys that it is actually taking from your custom configuration file, as well as using the shortcut instead of the actual executable in the installation folder. But this is the process that you have to go through to get this to work properly. It is a bit unnerving, to say the least, that they've released a benchmarking tool that doesn't actually run in full screen when they say it's in full screen. I think if they wanted to be a little bit more descriptive, they should have put borderless windowed, or just included both borderless and full screen and given people the option to run it whatever way they chose. But they've basically forced it to run in borderless windowed mode, which is a bit unfortunate. Square. But yeah, I mean, we're already seeing some improvements in the frame rate. This area dipped down to in the 30s earlier. Now we're up at around 40-ish. I really hope this turns out to be an improvement. I mean, I can already see that there is an improvement. It is a much higher improvement if you're not actually recording. I'm not gonna lie. It's a much higher improvement if you're not actually recording, but hopefully this will be obvious enough to you guys that it is an actual improvement and not just me blowing smoke up your ass. The weirdest part about this benchmark is that my keyboard is a Black Widow version 2, I think. I don't know. It's RGB, and it reacts, in a lot of games it has the reaction to certain effects that happen during the game and stuff like that, and this benchmark actually messes with my keyboard. Not in the good way either. It actually blinks every once in a while. It blinks yellow, but right now it's turned off. I don't know why. But I guess they've implemented some sort of RGB code into this benchmark to, you know, kind of play around with it, but it's not working right. So it may shut, if you have an RGB keyboard, it may shut it off. Not the keyboard itself, but it'll shut off the lights. And well, if your room doesn't have a light turned on, it's kind of hard to see the keys. I have a wherewithal as to where the keys are. So you can see our score in the bottom left corner is already higher than our ending score of the previous run. So there is a clear improvement. Now, and again, the bottom left corner actually does indicate a score, but it's actually your frame rate. Just think of that as your average frame rate times 1,000. So we're about to hit 5,000. It's 50. Okay, so the average frame rate is around the 50-ish area. Without recording, I ran the benchmark and I got about 57, 58 frames a second. So that'll tell you how much recording actually affected the frame rate count. But the bottom line is we got 10 more frames out of that. Okay, so roughly, we're looking at about a 10 FPS increase by implementing this little change. I'm going to turn that back on. So sorry about that in the middle part. I know for a fact that display capture actually causes a much larger FPS drop than game capture does, so I had to switch it. It didn't really seem to make much of a difference. So, but anyway, so that's how you actually implement the changes to the Final Fantasy 15 benchmarking tool. Thank you to Dr. Daxi for finding this out and coming up with a fix for it. And hopefully this will give you guys an indication as to maybe running your games in full screen mode on PC ain't such a bad thing after all. Because it basically puts focus on the game, which is what we all want. And borderless window mode is cool, and it definitely helps you out a lot, but sometimes it just doesn't work right. But that's going to do it for this video, guys. I hope I've helped you out, and I hope that this will make implementing the changes a little bit easier for some of you who are not familiar with the way of this way of making changes to your games. You can do this kind of stuff with other games. It's possible to manipulate video game configuration files. You just have to look in the right places for all the right things. And again, big thanks to Dr. Daxi over on Reddit for coming out with this fix. And again, I will put the links to these fixes in the video description, so if you want to try this out yourself to get a proper score, definitely give this fix a look. But thank you guys for joining me, and join me in the next video, whatever that might be. Might be playing Final Fantasy 12 in 4K. I don't know, we'll have to see. I'll show you guys how I go about doing that, where we take a look at possibly playing Final Fantasy 12 at 4K and see if my system can run it well enough. And don't forget to check the links in the video description below, especially the one for Extra Life. We're trying to raise $200 again for a children's charity. It's 2018, and I can't wait till later this year when we pull yet another Extra Life charity stream. Might try and do more than just one, to be honest. I still don't have a day job, and I've got plenty of time on my hands, so may actually try to do one of those anyway, to see if we can raise that money. And don't worry if you can't donate. It's not that big a deal. I promise you we're going to make that $200 goal. But if you can, don't hesitate to donate. But until next time, guys, I'm Adam Wolf. This is Final Fantasy 15, and I will see you guys in the next one.